And we should recognize that there are ways in which people can be pushed away from important movements. For example, during the Vietnam War era organizing, there was the tendency to articulate the issues at work in that war in such a way as to alienate black people, in such a way as to alienate Latinos and other people of color. Because we were saying then, yes, there is a war in Vietnam, but there is also a war at home, and there is a connection between the war in Vietnam and the war that is inflicted on people in black communities all over the country. And when we stand up in opposition to the war in Vietnam, we also oppose the very same forces for inflicting war upon us at home. As a matter of fact, I remember in those days it was quite amazing that military personnel trained in Vietnam would be given special bonuses if they join paramilitary squads associated with police forces at home. You know the SWAT, well, everybody knows what a SWAT squad is, right? SWAT, right? Special Weapons Tactical Squad. The first Special Weapons and Tactical Squad, which made its debut in Los Angeles in an assault against the Black Panther Party, consisted of former Green Berets. Oh yes. So that it was not only a connection which we were able to see analytically, we could see empirical evidence of that connection. And when I lived in Los Angeles, I saw with my own eyes former Green Berets wielding the same weapons they had wielded in Vietnam, assault the Black Panther Party office. I saw a helicopter drop a bomb on the Black Panther Party office. So that those connections were real clear to me. There's no question in my mind. But then there were people who weren't so close who said that, well, if we really want to end the war in Vietnam, that is the only issue we should focus on, the war in Vietnam. This should be a single issue movement. And therefore, many of the rallies and demonstrations, those who organized it didn't want anybody to get up there and talk about what was happening to people who were being shot down and killed at home. And that created a serious problem. It wasn't that we wanted to detract any attention away from the war in Vietnam. It was that we wanted to make its significance clearer. And that is what we have to do during this period. Because we need a movement. If we are going to put a stop to this irrational, bellicose nonsense that's happening over there, we're gonna need everybody. We need everybody. Everybody. We need women. We need women and we need men. We need straight people and we need lesbians and gay men in this movement. We need African Americans and we need Asian Americans and we need the indigenous people of this country and we need European Americans and we need Latinos and we need Pacific Islanders. We need everybody. We need workers and we need students. We need everybody. We need people who wear three-piece suits and people who have green hair. We need everybody. And now is the time for us to understand the connections we have with one another. Now is the time for us to become aware of the extent to which we are all sisters and brothers in this battle. But we must treat each other as sisters and brothers. And we must learn how to treat each other as sisters and brothers. And therefore, we have to become aware of the language that we use. We have to become aware of the tendency for people in this country, not only people of European descent, but people of African descent as well, to assume that somehow because we live in this country which represents itself as the most advanced technologically in the world, that somehow we have more knowledge, that somehow we have more wisdom, and that somehow we have the right to decide what other people should do. That is what's going on right now. But I have heard feminists argue that the reason we should get out of Saudi Arabia is because Saudi Arabia is the most sexist country that there is. Oh, wait a minute now, wait a minute. You know, it may be true that there's a hell of a lot of sexism in Saudi Arabia, but there's a hell of a lot of sexism here at home. And believe me, there are enough Arab women who are feminists who can tell us how they need us to support the work that they're doing against sexism in Saudi Arabia or anywhere else in the Arab world. You see, I mean, there's a tendency for us to believe, well, we have this feminist movement and therefore we know what a realm of women's equality would look like all over the world. And so we end up being elitist in the sense of telling other women what they have to do in their culture, which we don't even understand. You know, so let's beware of that. You know, let's beware of that. We have plenty of work to do here at home. And there are plenty of ways in which we can express our solidarity. Solidarity. Solidarity is different from trying to take over and make decisions about how a movement actually unfolds. And, you know, I hear that there are problems on this campus, too, in terms of relations between people of color. Are there? And see, as you think about the need to go out there and express your opposition to the war in the Middle East, remember that there is a lot of business that you have to take care of in your own backyard, in your own living room. And you see, if you don't begin to try to work out some of these problems that stem from racism on this campus, then how are you going to build a movement against that war? I hear that, you know, there's a lot of confusion going on in terms of organizations and African Americans not being able to have an organization of African Americans. You know, I know that there is this a notion that we are all equal and that we should be all equal, and yes, we should be. But historically, some of us have been marginalized and oppressed to a greater extent than others of us. And sometimes we need a space. You see, autonomy is not separatism. Autonomy is not separatism. As an African American woman, there are times when I only want to meet with my African American sisters because there are issues that I can discuss only in that space. But that isn't to say that I am opposed to African American men, working with African American men. That isn't to say that I'm opposed to working with European American women or men. Not at all. But there are certain areas in which I need to autonomously express myself. And if a white woman comes up to me and says, I feel excluded, I say, you feel excluded? You feel excluded? And I mean, what do you think is going to happen anyway? I mean, one of the problems is that people, because of the whole educational system that we have in this country, most people of European descent have not even been given the opportunity to learn anything about our culture. So they don't even understand us when we talk. And that's sad. That is really sad. Or they don't understand our cultural means of expressing ourselves. And we might get upset and start talking loud. And that's okay. You know? Because we're just saying how we feel. And as a matter of fact, I much prefer to scream and talk loud than to get an ulcer. You know what I mean? To keep it all inside. So, you know, we have to begin, unfortunately, we have, as people of color, learned much more about the dominant culture because that is all we've been able to learn in the dominant culture's institutions. As a matter of fact, sometimes we forget what it's like to be associated with our own culture. We forget how to talk like we grew up talking. We forget our music. We forget a lot of things. We start feeling that we have to act like the dominant culture wants us to act if we are to be a part of this, especially in academia. We have to, as if knowledge can only be produced in a certain way that is conditioned by the history of European thought, and European thought that is decidedly misogynist and sexist at that. So there's a lot of things we have to work on. I don't want to give the lecture that I was originally planning to give. Maybe I'll come back in a couple of years, and do that. But what I do want to say is, what time is it now? Okay, I know that there is going to be a statement by what's his name? At 9 o'clock, and I am going to, conclude my, presentation because I know some of you, we should probably be there so that we know how best to challenge this. This is a serious business. It's very serious business. And so I'm going to conclude without really having brought everything together, but I did want to take this time and because of the gravity of the situation, to offer some suggestions to you which might be helpful in the coming hours and days as you attempt on this campus to create the strongest possible opposition. And do not think that you are isolated. I know you're, way out. Where are we? In Maine. But when you consider that at this moment there are people in gatherings like this and out in the street and in churches all over the world, not only in this country but all over the world. So reflect upon your membership in that larger community as you work here in Maine. I know some of you are probably going to want to take off and go, somewhere else where the action is, but you have to create action here. And let me say that there will be two marches. There are two marches. There are two organizations that are kind of organizing this. I'm not going to get into, why that is. But there is a march on January 19th, and there's a march on January 26th. And I think that one of the first things that you can do is to begin to organize transportation so you can get down to Washington and be there. And I will see you on the 26th. Fight the power. Thank you very much.